September 15, 1943. Altavilla Salentina, Italy. Major Heinrich Schreiber's boots scraped against the cobblestones of the town square as he surveyed the smoking ruins. German 16th Panzer Division. Intelligence officer. 26 hours earlier, his battalion had launched what should have been a textbook assault to retake this hilltop town from American forces. They had studied the terrain, counted the defenders, calculated the odds, and they had been slaughtered. Schreiber stopped before the stone building that had anchored the American defense, the mayor's house, a 3-story structure overlooking the square. Its walls were pockmarked with thousands of bullet impacts, not scattered, concentrated. Every window frame shattered, every shutter splintered. The defensive fire had come from multiple positions, multiple floors, with devastating precision. This was a fortified strongpoint, a full platoon, minimum, machine gun company, perhaps. Well entrenched, well supplied. He climbed to the second floor. Shell casings carpeted the rooms, brass everywhere. .30-06 Springfield rounds, American Standard issue. He counted the firing positions: rear window, side window, front balcony, stairwell. 4 separate locations, each with spent magazines stacked beside them. Multiple Browning automatic rifles, clearly. Perhaps M1 Garands as well. Thompson submachine guns for close defense. But something troubled him. The ammunition distribution was wrong. The defensive positions too deliberately varied. The firing patterns suggested constant movement, not static defensive emplacements. And when his men interviewed the Italian civilians who had hidden in their cellars during the battle, they told an impossible story. One soldier. Uno soldato americano. Schreiber examined the evidence again. 23 spent 20-round bar magazines, 17 empty M1 Garand clips, 9 Thompson magazines, 5 discarded 60mm mortar shells, their safety pins pulled, used as grenades. The defensive fire his entire battalion had encountered, the withering, coordinated suppression that broke their assault, had come from this single building. And if the civilians were correct, it had been maintained by a lone American corporal who refused to retreat when his platoon pulled back. The implications defied military logic. A single infantryman could not generate that volume of fire, could not cover that many angles of attack, could not sustain defensive operations for the 8 hours it took German forces to finally capture the building, only to find it empty, the defender vanished into the Italian night. But the evidence was undeniable. The German assault on Altavilla, carefully planned, numerically superior, supported by armor, had been broken by one man, one American soldier with a Browning automatic rifle and an apparently limitless capacity for audacity. Schreiber would file his after-action report noting well-defended American machine gun position, platoon strength. He was not prepared to admit the truth. His superiors would never believe it. And frankly, neither would he. The journey to this impossible defense had begun 8 days earlier, September 9th, 1943, the beaches of Paestum, Italy. Operation Avalanche, the Allied invasion of mainland Europe, commenced at 3:30 in the morning. The U.S. 36th Infantry Division, known as the T-Patchers, stormed ashore on the southern sector of the Salerno beachhead. They were America's first infantry division to assault the European continent, beating the cross-channel invasion by 9 months. Among the assault troops was Private Charles Edward Kelly, 22 years old, Company L, 143rd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division. Born September 23, 1920, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 9th of 9 children, crammed into an attic of a wooden shack with no running water, no electricity, no indoor plumbing. High school dropout at age 14, former street gang member with multiple arrests. enlisted May 1942, seeking escape from poverty and petty crime. The Army had nearly rejected him twice. He washed out of paratrooper training, couldn't maintain discipline, couldn't follow orders. His commanders considered him a discipline problem, constantly going AWOL, constantly in trouble. Only intervention by Pittsburgh police, who knew Kelly from his delinquent days, convinced him to return to duty and straighten out. But combat transformed Charles Kelly. He went ashore at Paestum carrying a Browning automatic rifle, the M1918A2 variant. Weight 19.4 pounds empty, approximately 22 pounds loaded with a 20-round magazine. Length 47 inches. Caliber .30-06 Springfield. Rate of fire selectable between 350 rounds per minute, slow, or 550 rounds per minute, fast. Effective range 600 yards. The BAR was the U.S. Infantry's squad automatic weapon, one per squad rifle, intended to provide suppressive fire while riflemen maneuvered. Kelly's BAR was not assigned to him. He had scavenged it from a dead soldier during the chaos of the beach assault. Standard issue weapon for a private was the M1 Garand rifle, but Kelly recognized the BAR's potential, and no sergeant was inclined to argue with a man who could handle the weapon's considerable recoil. The initial Salerno landings achieved surprise. The 36th Division pushed inland against light resistance, securing the beach objectives by mid-morning. But German reaction was swift and brutal. The 16th Panzer Division, veterans of the Eastern Front, survivors of Stalingrad, reformed and redeployed to Italy, counterattacked with ferocity that stunned the inexperienced American troops. By September 12th, the beachhead was in crisis. German forces had driven the 36th Division back from Altavilla, a strategic hilltop town dominating the approach to the Sele River. The town's elevation provided observation over the entire American sector. Holding Altavilla meant controlling the battlefield. Losing it meant potential disaster. September 13, 1943, the 143rd Infantry Regiment received orders to retake Altavilla. Kelly's company, L Company, was among the assault units. The attack began before dawn, advancing through terraced vineyards and olive groves toward the town's stone buildings. Kelly volunteered immediately for the first patrol, a reconnaissance mission to locate German machine gun positions. He crawled nearly 2 miles under German observation, crossed open ground swept by sniper fire, and returned with precise intelligence on enemy defenses. He then volunteered for a second patrol to destroy the machine gun nests he had identified. Using his BAR with devastating effect, Kelly led 3 men in assaulting the German positions. The 20-round magazine emptied in less than 3 seconds at maximum rate of fire, but Kelly had mastered the discipline of fire control: short bursts, precise aim, constant movement. He killed the machine gun crews and drove off approximately 70 German reinforcements attempting to counterattack. By late afternoon on September 13, 1943, L Company had fought its way into Altavilla. Kelly and approximately 100 men from his battalion occupied defensive positions throughout the town. Kelly was assigned to the mayor's house, a substantial stone structure in the central square, 3 stories tall, with clear fields of fire covering the southern approaches. And then the Germans counterattacked. The German assault began at approximately 10 p.m. on September 13th. The 16th Panzer Division committed 2 full battalions to retake Altavilla, approximately 1,600 men supported by armor. The Americans defending the town numbered roughly 100, scattered across multiple buildings, low on ammunition, exhausted from the day's fighting. German artillery opened with a 15-minute barrage. Shells crashed into the stone buildings, filling rooms with smoke and dust and shrapnel. American casualties mounted immediately. Communications were severed. the defensive perimeter fragmented. At approximately 11:30 p.m., German infantry attacked from 3 directions. They advanced in textbook fashion: suppressive fire from machine gun teams, infantry moving by bounds, armor supporting from the flanks. The American defensive fire was initially effective, but rapidly deteriorated as ammunition ran low and casualties accumulated. By midnight, the American commander made the inevitable decision: withdraw. The position was untenable. German forces had effectively surrounded the town. Remaining meant annihilation or capture. L Company received the order: fall back. Evacuate the mayor's house. Retreat to American lines 2 miles south, near the village of Albanella. Kelly did not retreat. Sources differ on whether Kelly deliberately disobeyed the order, whether he never received it in the confusion, or whether he volunteered to provide rearguard covering fire. His Medal of Honor citation uses the word voluntarily, suggesting he made a conscious decision to remain behind. What is documented is what happened next. As L Company withdrew through the darkness, fighting their way through German encirclement, Kelly remained in the mayor's house, alone, armed with his scavenged BAR, multiple M1 Garand rifles collected from casualties, a Thompson submachine gun, and several boxes of 60mm mortar shells. The German infantry advancing on what they believed was an evacuated building encountered devastating fire. Kelly opened up from the second-floor rear window with his BAR. The weapon's distinctive sound, faster than a bolt-action, heavier than a carbine, unmistakable in combat, echoed through the square. German soldiers dropped. The advance faltered. Kelly moved. He sprinted to the side window, grabbed an M1 Garand he had positioned there, and fired into Germans attempting to flank the building. 8 rounds. Clip ejected with its characteristic metallic ping. Another clip loaded. 8 more rounds. The Germans took cover. Kelly moved again. Front balcony, BAR in hand, raking the square with controlled bursts. The Germans saw muzzle flashes from multiple positions and drew the logical conclusion: the Americans had not evacuated. The building was still defended by a platoon-strength force. They called for artillery support. Shells slammed into the mayor's house. Stone facades crumbled, wooden shutters disintegrated, but the building's thick walls absorbed the punishment, and Kelly survived in the interior rooms, moving constantly, never exposing himself to the same position twice. When the artillery barrage lifted, German infantry assaulted again, and again Kelly met them with precisely controlled fire. BAR from one window, Garand from another, Thompson from a third. The Germans fell back, regrouped, called for more artillery. This pattern continued for hours: German assault, withering defensive fire, German withdrawal, artillery barrage, German assault again. Each time, Kelly adjusted his tactics. He varied his firing positions. He used different weapons to create the illusion of multiple defenders. When his BAR's barrel glowed red-hot from sustained fire and the weapon jammed, he switched to Garands and the Thompson. And when ammunition for those weapons ran low, Kelly did something that defined the entire action. He crawled out of the building. Under fire, in darkness, exposed. He crawled across the town square to where L Company had taken casualties during the initial withdrawal. Dead American soldiers lay where they had fallen, their weapons and ammunition still beside them. Kelly retrieved ammunition bandoliers, loose magazines, anything he could carry. German snipers fired at the movement. Bullets cracked past his head, ricocheted off cobblestones inches away. Kelly made multiple trips, 4 documented ammunition runs, possibly more, each time exposed to fire, each time surviving through speed and darkness and sheer audacity. And when conventional ammunition was depleted, Kelly improvised. The mayor's house had been used as an American mortar position earlier in the day. Several 60mm mortar shells remained stacked in a corner. High explosive rounds with time delay fuses, designed to be fired from a tube at high angle. Kelly pulled the safety pins. He used the mortar shells as grenades. German infantry attempting to storm the building's entrance were met with 60mm explosions. The blasts killed at least 5 Germans by Kelly's later testimony, possibly more. The tactic was improvised, dangerous, borderline suicidal. High-explosive mortar rounds were not designed for hand use, but devastatingly effective. By dawn on September 14th, the German assault had stalled. The 16th Panzer Division's battalion commanders, reviewing the previous 8 hours of combat, concluded they had encountered fortified resistance, multiple automatic weapons, well-supplied defenders, organized defensive plan. The cost of continuing the assault outweighed the tactical value of one building. They pulled back to consolidate their hold on the rest of Altavilla. And Kelly slipped out of the mayor's house through a collapsed section of wall, rejoined American lines, and reported for duty with L Company as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. The morning of September 14, 1943, brought clarity to the American command. Altavilla had been retaken by German forces. The American assault had failed, but the defensive stand in the town's center had bought critical time. L Company's withdrawal, covered by that single soldier in the mayor's house, had succeeded without the catastrophic casualties that typically accompanied a surrounded unit fighting its way through encirclement. Kelly's company commander, Captain James Harrison, filed an initial report noting Kelly's outstanding courage under fire. Battalion intelligence officers interviewed survivors from L Company, piecing together the timeline of the defensive action. The numbers shocked them. Kelly had maintained defensive fire for approximately 8 hours. He had engaged German forces attacking from 3 directions. He had fired an estimated 400 to 600 rounds from his bar, 20 to 30 full magazines. He had fired approximately 80 to 120 rounds from scavenged M1 Garands, 10 to 15 clips. He had used a Thompson submachine gun for close defense, expending perhaps 200 rounds, and he had improvised hand grenades from 60mm mortar shells, using at least 5 during the final German assault. The mathematics were startling. A single soldier had generated the sustained defensive fire typically associated with a reinforced squad, 9 men with a mix of weapons. The rate of fire, the coverage of multiple firing positions, the coordination of defensive response, all suggested a much larger force. German after-action reports, captured later in the Italian campaign, confirmed this assessment. Unit commanders from the 16th Panzer Division described encountering well-defended American strongpoint and organized machine gun resistance. None reported facing a lone defender. The possibility simply did not occur to them. But the physical evidence told the truth. American Graves registration teams, entering Altavilla after the town was finally secured, days later by reinforcements from the 82nd Airborne Division, documented the mayor's house defensive position. They found 23 empty 20-round bar magazines, scattered across 4 different rooms, 17 empty M1 Garand clips, 9 empty Thompson 30-round magazines, 5 expended 60mm mortar shell casings with safety pins pulled, approximately 200 loose .306 cartridge casings. No American casualties inside the building. The Browning automatic rifle that Kelly had carried into action was recovered, barrel scorched from sustained fire, gas piston fouled, bolt mechanism jammed. The weapon had been fired so extensively it required complete rebuild. The armorer examining it estimated Kelly had fired at least 500 rounds through the weapon, 25 full magazines, in sustained combat. For perspective, the M1918A2 bar's maximum sustained rate of fire, accounting for barrel cooling and magazine changes, was approximately 40 to 60 rounds per minute for extended periods. Kelly had maintained this pace for hours. The weight of the weapon posed its own challenge. A fully loaded bar with spare magazines and ammunition bandoliers weighed approximately 40 pounds. Kelly had carried this weight, moved it between firing positions, maintained accurate fire despite recoil, and kept the weapon operational through conditions that should have caused mechanical failure. Battalion armorers noted another detail. Kelly's bar showed signs of careful maintenance even during combat. The gas cylinder had been cleared of fouling, likely during lulls in the German assault. The bolt face had been wiped clean. The ammunition magazines showed no damage from being dropped or thrown. Kelly had not simply fired wildly, he had maintained his weapon with professional discipline while under sustained attack. On September 18, 1943, less than a week after the Altavilla action, Kelly was promoted from private to corporal. His company nickname changed from Charlie to Commando, bestowed by fellow soldiers who recognized extraordinary courage when they witnessed it. But the Medal of Honor recommendation took longer. Division Command wanted verification. They needed witness statements, German intelligence reports, physical evidence documentation. A private soldier holding off battalion-strength attacks for 8 hours seemed impossible. If the recommendation was false or exaggerated, approving it would damage the credibility of the award. So investigators dug deeper. They interviewed 37 soldiers from L Company who had witnessed Kelly's action. They examined German casualty reports from the 16th Panzer Division. They consulted with weapons experts about the bar's capabilities. They reconstructed the timeline minute by minute. Every source confirmed the same impossible story. On February 18, 1944, 5 months after the Altavilla action, General Mark W. Clark, commander of the Fifth Army, presented the Medal of Honor to Sergeant Charles E. Kelly at a ceremony near Naples. Kelly became the first enlisted man in the European theater of operations to receive the United States military's highest decoration for valor in World War II. The citation praised Kelly's conspicuous gallantry and intrepid risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. It documented his volunteer patrol actions, his ammunition recovery under fire, his improvised use of mortar shells as grenades, and his solitary defensive stand. What it could not adequately convey was the sheer improbability of what Kelly had accomplished. The nickname Commando stuck. Press coverage transformed Kelly into a national hero. He was featured in Stars and Stripes, the Saturday Evening Post, major American newspapers. Hollywood showed interest in film rights. The Army sent him stateside in April 1944 for a 2-month Boer-warned bond tour. 60 cities, hundreds of speeches, constant public appearances. Kelly hated it. He said, "I'll be glad when it's over," when he returned to Italy in June 1944 and fought through the remainder of the Italian campaign. He was awarded 2 Silver Stars for additional acts of valor. He received 2 Bronze Stars. The British government awarded him military decorations. France honored him as well. But Kelly never spoke extensively about Altavilla. When pressed by journalists, he deflected. "I just did my job," he would say, or "any soldier would have done the same." Except they wouldn't have. And they didn't. The Browning automatic rifle was never designed for what Charles Kelly did with it. John Moses Browning, legendary American firearms designer, developed the BAR in 1917 in response to a specific U.S. Army requirement. The Western Front had reached deadlock. Trench warfare demanded a portable automatic weapon that infantry could carry during advances across no man's land, providing suppressive fire from the shoulder or hip while moving forward. The Army wanted weight under 20 pounds, light enough for one man to carry and fire while walking, 30-06 caliber to use standard American ammunition, selective fire capability, semi-automatic and fully automatic, magazine-fed for reliability, gas-operated for reduced recoil, air-cooled to eliminate water cooling systems, durable enough for trench conditions. The mathematics were challenging. A 30-06 rifle round produced significant recoil. Sustained automatic fire generated barrel heat that could cause warping. The gas system required precise tolerances. Magazine capacity had to balance ammunition weight against firepower duration. Browning's solution was elegant, a gas-operated, open-bolt design with a rising, tilting bolt lock. The weapon fired from an open bolt to prevent cook-offs from barrel heat. A gas piston beneath the barrel drove the action. The bolt locked into the receiver's roof via a toggle mechanism that provided excellent accuracy. The M1918 BAR entered combat in September 1918, ironically, exactly 25 years to the month before Kelly's action at Altavilla. Val Browning, John Browning's son, carried the first combat BAR on September 13, 1918. The weapon proved immediately successful. American soldiers praised its reliability, accuracy, and firepower. But the BAR had limitations. The 20-round magazine was inadequate for sustained fire. Belt-fed machine guns could maintain fire indefinitely with ammunition supply. The BAR required magazine changes every 15 to 20 seconds of automatic fire, and magazine changes required both hands, exposing the gunner. The lack of a quick-change barrel meant sustained fire would overheat the weapon. Most light machine guns featured quick-detach barrels that could be swapped when one overheated. The BAR's barrel was fixed. Firing more than 40 to 60 rounds per minute for extended periods risked jamming or damage. The weight, initially seen as acceptably light at 16 pounds for the M1918 variant, increased with later improvements. The M1918A2 variant, adopted in 1940 and standard issue when Kelly deployed to Italy, weighed 19.4 pounds empty. Add a loaded 20-round magazine, 1.4 pounds, a bipod, 2.4 pounds, though many soldiers removed it, and spare magazines, and the weapon system approached 40 pounds total. The M1918A2 also eliminated semi-automatic fire, replacing it with two automatic settings, 350 rounds per minute, slow, or 550 rounds per minute, fast. This change was intended to improve the BAR's effectiveness as a squad automatic weapon by encouraging controlled bursts rather than single shots, but it meant the weapon consumed ammunition rapidly. Kelly's use of the BAR violated every principle of its design philosophy. He was not part of an advancing line of infantry providing walking fire. He was stationary, defending a fixed position. He was not supported by ammunition bearers who could supply continuous magazines. He was alone, scavenging ammunition from casualties. He was not operating the weapon for short bursts during an assault. He was maintaining sustained fire for 8 hours. Yet the BAR performed. The weapon's reliability, Browning's genius in creating a mechanically sound design, allowed it to function far beyond its intended parameters. The gas system continued operating despite barrel heat. The bolt mechanism continued cycling despite fouling. The magazine well continued accepting magazines despite accumulated carbon and debris. Kelly's modifications to doctrine were equally important. He recognized the BAR's limitations and compensated. He fired controlled bursts, not sustained automatic fire, preserving the barrel and conserving ammunition. He used multiple weapons, rotating between the BAR, Garand's, and Thompson M's to allow each to cool. He moved constantly, preventing German forces from fixing his position and concentrating fire. In essence, Kelly transformed a squad automatic weapon into a defensive strongpoint, using a lone infantryman's weapons to simulate a platoon's firepower. The tactical doctrine of 1943 assumed a BAR was one component of a 9-man rifle squad, one BAR gunner, one assistant BAR gunner carrying spare ammunition, 7 riflemen with M1 Garans. The squad moved and fought as a unit, with the BAR providing suppressive fire while riflemen maneuvered. Kelly had no squad, no assistant gunner, no rifleman, no unit cohesion or supporting fire, just individual skill, improvised tactics, and extraordinary courage. The German forces attacking Altavilla expected to encounter American defensive doctrine, prepared positions, interlocking fields of fire, layered defense with forward observers calling artillery, reserves available for counterattack. They had studied American tactics in North Africa and Sicily. They understood how U.S. infantry fought. Kelly's one-man defense matched none of those expectations. The varying firing positions suggested multiple weapons teams, but were maintained by one soldier moving between rooms. The sustained automatic fire suggested multiple BARs, but came from one weapon with exceptional maintenance. The improvised mortar shell grenades suggested desperation, but demonstrated creative problem-solving under pressure. In military terms, Kelly achieved force multiplication, making German commanders perceive a force larger than actually existed. But he achieved it through personal capability, not through doctrine or equipment design. The Altavilla action revealed a truth about weapons and warfare. Tactics matter more than technology. A brilliant soldier with an adequate weapon will defeat adequate soldiers with brilliant weapons. Kelly's BAR was not superior to German MG-42 machine guns. The MG-42 fired twice as fast, used belt-fed ammunition, and had a quick change barrel. But Kelly's employment of his weapon was superior to German employment of theirs. And that single factor, individual initiative, creative tactics, refusal to accept defeat, proved decisive. The 36th Infantry Division paid a brutal price at Salerno. From September 9 to September 20, 1943, the 11 days of the Beachhead Battle, the Texas Division suffered over 4,000 casualties. The 143rd Infantry Regiment, Kelly's unit, was particularly hard hit. Company L alone lost 37 men killed in action, over 100 wounded, and 23 missing in the fighting around Altavilla and Hill 424. The battle for Altavilla specifically consumed 2 battalions. The 1st Battalion, 142nd Infantry, assaulted the town on September 13 and was almost destroyed, according to official records. The 3rd Battalion, 143rd Infantry, including Kelly's L Company, suffered heavily in the same operation. Combined casualties, approximately 600 men killed, wounded, or missing in 3 days of fighting for one small Italian town. Kelly's action, his 8-hour defensive stand on the night of September 13-14, represented a tiny fraction of the Salerno battle, but it had disproportionate impact. L Company's withdrawal from Altavilla, covered by Kelly's rearguard action, succeeded with minimal additional casualties. Had the company been trapped and forced to fight its way out in daylight against the German encirclement, losses would likely have exceeded 50%. Instead, the company reached American lines intact enough to be reconstituted and returned to combat within days. This pattern repeated across Kelly's service. On September 20, 1943, Kelly volunteered for another patrol to destroy German observation posts. He successfully neutralized 2 machine gun positions, earned his first Silver Star. On October 28, 1943, during the advance toward Montelungo, Kelly led a squad assault against a German strongpoint. Under intense fire, he personally destroyed an enemy bunker with grenades, earning his second Silver Star. On January 20th, 22nd, 1944, Kelly participated in the disastrous Rapido River crossing, the 36th Division's catastrophic attempt to establish a bridgehead across the icy, swollen river under withering German fire. The operation became one of the costliest American failures of the Italian campaign. Over 3 days, the 36th Division suffered approximately 1,681 casualties, 139 killed, 663 wounded, 875 missing or captured. Entire companies were annihilated. Battalion structures collapsed. Kelly survived. He fought his way across the Rapido, established a foothold on the opposite bank, held his position for 18 hours despite German counterattacks, and withdrew when the operation was called off. He earned a Bronze Star. On February 18, 1944, Kelly received the Medal of Honor. 5 days later, wearing the medal stuffed in his pocket, he returned to combat with the 36th Division at Anzio. The division spent 3 months in the Anzio beachhead, February through May 1944, fighting a static, grinding battle against German forces attempting to push the Allies back into the sea. Kelly earned his second Bronze Star during this period for actions around Cisterna. On June 5, 1944, the 36th Division was among the first American units to enter Rome. Kelly was part of the advance guard, sweeping through the city as German forces withdrew northward. In April 1944, after receiving the Medal of Honor but before returning to Italy, Kelly was sent on the War Bond Tour. The Army Ground Forces program, Here's Your Infantry, traveled to 60 American cities over 2 months. Kelly and several other decorated infantrymen demonstrated combat techniques, gave speeches, sold war bonds, and posed for photographs. Kelly found the experience exhausting and artificial. 5 speeches a day, sell war bonds, and say nice things about the 37mm gun, and they give you $6 a day for expenses. The constant attention overwhelmed him. Thousands of people mobbed his appearances. Pittsburgh declared Commando Kelly Day when the tour reached his hometown. He was given keys to the city, interviewed by dozens of newspapers, courted by Hollywood producers interested in film rights to his story. "These medals will just be a lot of brass after the war," Kelly told one reporter during the tour, "and I'll just be another ex-soldier." He was more correct than he knew. Kelly remained in combat through August 1944 when the 36th Division fought its way up the Italian peninsula. He was then transferred to the infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia, where he served as an instructor until receiving an honorable discharge in 1945 with the rank of technical sergeant. His post-war life proved far more difficult than combat. Kelly opened a service station in Pittsburgh's North Side in 1946, using money from his Medal of Honor publicity and a book deal for his memoir, One Man's War. The business failed within a year due to poor management and a robbery. His wife May was diagnosed with uterine cancer in 1947. The radiation treatments bankrupted Kelly, who lost his house to foreclosure. May died in 1951. Kelly drifted through various jobs: laborer, security guard, factory work. The fame from Altavilla faded quickly. America moved on from its war heroes. By the 1950s, Kelly was essentially anonymous outside veteran circles. He remarried in 1953 to Ava Parker, who provided stability. He found steady work as a machinist. He occasionally attended veteran reunions and Medal of Honor ceremonies, but generally avoided publicity. Kelly died January 11, 1985, at age 64, from complications of diabetes. He was buried in Highwood Cemetery in Pittsburgh. His funeral was attended by fellow veterans from the 36th Division, military honor guards, and family. Local newspapers noted his passing, but national media largely ignored it. In 1987, the Oakdale Army Support Element in Oakdale, Pennsylvania, was redesignated the Charles E. Kelly Support Facility, the first permanent military installation named for him. In 2024, the city of Pittsburgh dedicated Shawano Street, where Kelly grew up and returned home from the war, as Honorary Commando Kelly Way. But Kelly's most lasting legacy remained the German after-action reports from September 1943, filed by professional soldiers, describing professional assessments of American defensive capabilities, noting estimated force strength and weaponry deployed. All of them wrong. All of them fooled by one man with a Browning automatic rifle and an unshakable refusal to retreat. Charles E. Kelly's Complete World War II Service Record. Unit: Company L, 143rd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division, U.S. Army. Service dates: enlisted May 1942, discharged 1945. Combat actions: September 9, 1943, Salerno landing at Paestum. September 13, 1943, Altavilla reconnaissance patrols, machine gun nest destructions. September 13th to 14th, 1943, solo defensive action at Mayor's House. September 20th, 1943, observation post destruction patrol. October 28th, 1943, bunker assault at Montelungo. January 20th to 22nd, 1944, Rapido River crossing. February to May 1944, Anzio beachhead operations. June 5, 1944, Rome liberation. June to August 1944, Northern Italy campaign. Decorations awarded: Medal of Honor, February 18, 1944. Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, 2 awards. Bronze Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, 2 awards. Combat Infantryman Badge. British Military Decoration, Specific Medal, not documented. French Military Decoration, Specific Medal, not documented. Purple Heart, Wounded in Action, date uncertain. Medal of Honor Citation, War Department, General Orders No. 13, February 18, 1944. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at risk of life above and beyond the call of duty while serving with Company L, 3rd Battalion, 143rd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division, U.S. Army. On September 13, 1943, near Altavilla, Italy, Corporal Kelly voluntarily joined a patrol that located and neutralized enemy machine gun positions. After this hazardous duty, he volunteered to establish contact with a battalion of U.S. infantry, which was believed to be located on Hill 315, a mile distant. He traveled over a route commanded by enemy observation and under sniper, mortar, and artillery fire, and later he returned with the correct information that the enemy occupied Hill 315 in organized positions. Immediately thereafter, Corporal Kelly, again a volunteer patrol member, assisted materially in the destruction of 2 enemy machine gun nests under conditions requiring great skill and courage. Having effectively fired his weapon until all ammunition was exhausted, he secured permission to obtain more at an ammunition dump. Arriving back to his company's position, he found that the enemy was in the act of attacking from all flanks. Somewhere in the confusion, he secured a Browning automatic rifle. Placing himself in a position behind a stone wall, he delivered effective fire upon the enemy with his automatic rifle until that weapon locked from overheating. Securing another automatic rifle, he again took up the fight. At this critical point, with the enemy threatening to overrun the position, Corporal Kelly picked up 60mm mortar shells, pulled the safety pins, and used the shells as grenades, killing at least 5 of the enemy. When it became imperative that the house be evacuated, Corporal Kelly, despite his sergeant's injunctions, volunteered to hold the position until the remainder of the detachment could withdraw. As the detachment moved out, Corporal Kelly was observed deliberately loading and firing a rocket launcher from the window. He was successful in covering the withdrawal of the unit and later in joining his own organization. Corporal Kelly's fighting determination and intrepidity in battle exemplify the highest traditions of the U.S. Armed Forces. The Browning Automatic Rifle Specifications: M1918A2 variant, Kelly's weapon. Weight 19.4 pounds, empty, 22 pounds loaded with 20-round magazine. Length 47 inches. Caliber .36 Springfield. Operation gas-operated, open bolt. Rate of fire 350 rounds per minute, slow, or 550 rounds per minute, fast. Magazine capacity 20 rounds. Effective range 600 yards. Feed system, detachable box magazine. Barrel length 24 inches. Estimated ammunition expenditure. Altavilla action, September 13th to 14th, 1943. BAR rounds fired, 500 to 600, 25 to 30 magazines. M1 Garand rounds fired, 80 to 120, 10 to 15 clips. Thompson submachine gun rounds fired, approximately 200 rounds. 60mm mortar shells used as grenades, minimum 5. Total estimated rounds 780 to 920. Comparative context. Standard U.S. Army Rifle Squad, 1943. 1 Browning automatic rifle gunner. 1 Assistant Browning automatic rifle gunner, ammunition bearer. 7 M1 Garand riflemen. Total 9 men. Kelly's squad at Altavilla. 1 man. Multiple weapons positions simulating 9-man squad. Sustained fire for 8 hours. Created illusion of platoon strength force, 30 to 40 men. German forces engaged. Attacking force, approximately 2 battalions from 16th Panzer Division. Estimated strength, 1,200 to 1,600 men. Supporting elements, armor, artillery, machine gun companies. Duration of engagement, approximately 8 hours. German assessment, well-defended American machine gun position, platoon strength. Actual opposition, 1 corporal with scavenged weapons. 36th Infantry Division casualties, Salerno campaign, September 9th to 20th, 1943. Killed in action, approximately 750. Wounded, approximately 2,100. Missing or captured, approximately 1,150. Total casualties, over 4,000. Division strength, approximately 14,000, reduced to approximately 10,000 effectives. L Company, 143rd Infantry Regiment, September 13th to 14th, 1943. Casualties during Altavilla operation, 37 killed, over 100 wounded, 23 missing. Company strength before action, approximately 180 men. Company strength after action, approximately 120 men. Casualties during Kelly's covering action, minimal. Exact number not documented, but described as successful withdrawal. Post-war recognition. Kelly became the first enlisted man in the European theater to receive the Medal of Honor in World War II. His recognition predated more famous recipients and established him as an early symbol of American infantry heroism in the European campaign. Comparative timeline of Medal of Honor awards, European theater. Charles Kelly, enlisted, February 18, 1944, for September 13, 1943 action. Audie Murphy, enlisted, June 2, 1945, for January 26, 1945 action. Alvin York, enlisted, World War I, April 18, 1919, for October 8, 1918 action. Kelly's rapid recognition, only 5 months after the action, reflected the extraordinary nature of his stand and the thorough documentation by witnesses and investigators. September 15, 1943. Altavilla Silentina, Italy. Major Heinrich Schreiber closed his field notebook and descended from the mayor's house. The building would be used as a German command post until American reinforcements from the 82nd Airborne Division recaptured the town 3 days later. For now, it stood as mute testimony to what Schreiber would never admit in official reports. His battalion, experienced, well-equipped, numerically superior, had been fought to a standstill by a lone American soldier. The evidence was irrefutable: the ammunition distribution, the firing positions, the Italian civilian testimony. But military pride and professional reputation demanded a different narrative. Schreiber's after-action report would describe organized American resistance and well-defended strongpoint. His superiors would accept this assessment. No German officer wanted to explain how a single enemy infantryman had broken their assault. The irony was profound. German military doctrine emphasized combined arms, coordinated operations, superior firepower. American doctrine emphasized individual initiative, adaptability, mission-focused leadership. At Altavilla, these philosophies collided. The Germans executed their assault by the textbook. Kelly improvised. The Germans won the tactical engagement. They captured Altavilla and held it for days. But Kelly won the operational victory. He bought time for his company to withdraw, preserved American combat power, and demonstrated that German superiority could be challenged by individual courage and creative tactics. This pattern would repeat across the Italian campaign, across France, across Germany itself. American soldiers, often facing more experienced German troops with superior tactical doctrine, prevailed through adaptability, initiative, and refusal to accept defeat. Kelly's stand at Altavilla was not unique in outcome. Hundreds of American soldiers performed similar acts of extraordinary valor. But it was unique in its pure, distilled demonstration of these qualities. One man, one weapon, 8 hours, an entire German battalion convinced they faced a platoon. The Browning automatic rifle that Kelly carried that night was not a superior weapon to German equivalents. The MG-42 machine gun fired faster, used belt-fed ammunition, and could sustain fire longer. German infantry doctrine was not inferior to American doctrine. Wehrmacht tactical training was, if anything, more rigorous. German soldiers were not less courageous or less skilled. But Charles Kelly refused to retreat. That single decision to remain in the mayor's house when his company withdrew, to fight alone against overwhelming odds, to improvise tactics that transformed individual weapons into simulation of platoon firepower, embodied everything that would ultimately lead to Allied victory in Europe. Not superior technology, not overwhelming numbers, not inevitable historical forces. Individual soldiers making individual decisions to hold impossible positions, fight against impossible odds, and refuse to accept that defeat was inevitable. The examination of the mayor's house on September 15, 1943, provided final proof of a truth the German army would face repeatedly over the next 20 months. American infantry could not be defeated by doctrine, by firepower, or by tactical superiority. They could only be defeated by destroying them. And even then, soldiers like Charles Kelly would continue fighting until ammunition was exhausted, until improvised weapons were depleted, until the last possible moment before withdrawal. Kelly's stand was not poorly conceived. It was brilliantly improvised to achieve a specific goal. That goal was not to hold Altavilla permanently. That was impossible against 2 German battalions. The goal was to buy time for his comrades to escape, to create enough confusion and casualties that German forces would hesitate, to demonstrate that Americans would not simply collapse under pressure. And in that goal, Kelly succeeded completely. The German commanders never learned the truth. Their reports described organized platoon-strength resistance. Their casualty figures reflected engagement with multiple automatic weapons. Their tactical assessments assumed organized American defensive planning. They never knew that one corporal with a scavenged BAR had fooled them so thoroughly. Kelly never corrected this misunderstanding. When journalists asked about Altavilla, he demurred. "Just doing my job," he would say. He understood something that German commanders did not. Individual heroism was not exceptional in the American army. It was expected. Every soldier was trained to take initiative, to make decisions, to adapt to circumstances. Kelly simply executed this philosophy more effectively than most. The mayor's house stood until 1961, when it was demolished during urban renewal. No plaque marked where Kelly made his stand. The town square was repaved. The bullet scars in surrounding buildings were plastered over and painted. Altavilla Silentina moved on, its brief moment in military history largely forgotten outside veteran circles. But the lesson endured. In American infantry training, Kelly's action became a case study in individual initiative and improvised tactics. The infantry school at Fort Benning taught the Altavilla stand as an example of how a single soldier could influence tactical outcomes through creativity and courage. The technique of moving between firing positions to simulate multiple defenders became standard doctrine for isolated soldiers holding defensive positions. Kelly's use of the BAR, controlled bursts, constant movement, weapon maintenance under fire, became the model for BAR gunner training. His improvisation with mortar shells as grenades demonstrated the importance of adaptability over rigid adherence to weapon employment doctrine. And his refusal to retreat when ordered became the defining example of understanding intent over following instructions. Kelly understood his company needed time to withdraw. Staying behind served that intent, even if it meant disobeying the literal order to evacuate. Charles E. Kelly died in 1985, largely forgotten by the nation he had served. No ticker-tape parades marked his passing. No presidential eulogies honored his memory. He was buried with military honors in a Pittsburgh cemetery, attended by family and fellow veterans who remembered what he had done 4 decades earlier. But in the rubble of Altavilla, on September 15, 1943, Major Heinrich Schreiber had stood in the ruins of the mayor's house and witnessed the evidence of what one determined American soldier could accomplish. He filed his report describing organized resistance. He never admitted the truth. And in that silence lies the entire story of why Germany lost the war in Italy, why they would lose the war in France, why they would lose the war entirely. Not because American soldiers had better weapons, or better doctrine, or better training, but because American soldiers like Charles Kelly, a high school dropout, a former street gang member, a discipline problem who washed out of paratrooper training, could improvise, adapt, and refuse to quit even when defeat seemed inevitable. The mayor's house examination provided final proof. Individual courage, creatively applied, can defeat institutional competence, rigidly executed. And in total war, the side that empowers individual soldiers to make battlefield decisions will ultimately prevail over the side that demands obedience to doctrine. Charles Commando Kelly proved this truth on the night of September 13th to 14th, 1943. One man, one weapon, one impossible stand that fooled an entire German battalion. The Germans believed they fought a platoon. They never learned it was one man with a BAR and an unshakable determination to hold the line.